India is mind-boggling and very revealing.
Talked about
There's a recent article which has some staggering statistics, and he points out that since the so-called reforms, 1990, India has, of course, boomed in many ways. For example, the number of billionaires has just shot up, and there's high-tech centers and so on. But and he says India has, at the time, 1990, India was, I think, 124th in the UN Development Index, which measures the health of a society by many measures. And he says that's changed since the reforms. It's moved down to 127th. So it's, its per capita income is lower than Bolivia, Nicaragua, and horrifying statistics. He says even the government concedes. I think he said 110,000 peasant suicides. The actual number is much higher. It's all the same policies. Same policies that build the high-tech labs that Thomas Friedman raves about, which I've seen, pretty impressive. Also, the same policies are leading to the peasant suicides a couple miles away. Eliminate rural credit, peasants forced to usurers, commodity crops with the prices fluctuating, get into debt, starve, flock to the cities.
Just to go back to Chile a little bit, and Michelle Bachelet, who's the president, she was a political prisoner, she was exiled, her father was killed by Pinochet. She's now the president of the country. Kind of a remarkable development. I think she's a single mother, divorced, and any comments about Bachelet?
Well, that's very important. For one thing, this is a very, culturally and socially, it's a very conservative country. It's supposed to have women presidents, especially divorced women presidents and so on. So yeah, it is important. Exactly what Chile will do is hard to say. I mean, the hand of the dictatorship is very heavy. I mean, just take another example. Codelco, which I mentioned, copper company, state-owned copper company, is required by law to give 10% of its income to the army. Well, nobody wants, I mean, the great majority doesn't want that anymore, but somehow people don't think they can change it, though they have the legislature in their hands and so on. And it's a split, it's a very unequal society. I think the inequality is about at the level of Brazil, which is outlandish. There's a lot of wealth, and it's very, you feel, you walk around Santiago, you feel you're in upscale parts of New York. On the other hand, elsewhere there's tremendous poverty. I met while I was there with Indians from the Mapuche area in the south. It's the biggest, and Aymara in the north, and then Quiche in Peru, and they have plenty of problems, serious problems. The government to some extent recognizes them, but they're not dealt with. And then there's just the urban poor and the rural poor, and the country's, the economy is good, by international standards, but it's fragile. It's based mostly on primary product export. As long as commodity prices shoot up, it's in pretty good shape. One of the places I went to, which interestingly is not known, but they're beginning to remember it, is Iquique in the north. It's the middle of the mining areas, and these were British owned, later American owned, but you go up in the mining areas, they're up in the Andes, and you can't imagine a scene like that. It's desert of the kind you can't imagine. There is nothing green. There is no water. Just a flat, kind of brownish sand area with a howling wind all the time. And in there are the mines, and you go through by now they're closed, but you can imagine how the miners lived. I won't bother describing it. Although they did show me a small concert hall where they had Pavarotti and people like that for the mine owners, who were brought up in proper style. Well, at one point, the miners, 100 years ago, 1907, the miners and their families in one of the biggest mines, there was a series of strikes, and they struck for just like pennies a day, almost nothing. But they did march down to Iquique, the city nearby. It's maybe 30 miles or so. The miners, the families, and so on, all marched to this seaside town. And they were welcomed by the mine owners and taken into a school and housed. And then they were brought into a schoolyard They brought in troops and their machine guns. They killed supposedly 4,500 people. I think that's the worst massacre in labor history. It's one of a number of massacres. Technically it's Chilean, but the British were behind it. In fact, that whole region belongs to Chile, mainly because the British backed them in a war with Bolivia and Peru, and they were able to conquer it. And the British wanted the mines, the nitrate mines, which were used for fertilizer and gunpowder. Later, the U.S. took them over. Well, finally they're beginning to commemorate it, the worst massacre in labor history, but we should know about it too. This is part of Western civilization. And yes, the younger people particularly are beginning to come to terms with it. Everywhere you go, you find things like that.
During the Allende period also, and I was kind of interested in what was going on culturally. There was a huge surge of popular music and theater, and one of the most noted performances, actually, and how I learned to know about this Iquique was the Cantata de Santa Maria de Iquique, performed by the ensemble Quilapayún, one of the Nueva Canción groups that was so popular in that period. And you may remember Victor Jara was killed by the junta during the coup. So that was another element of that Allende period that was very, very exciting culturally.
Yeah, that certainly was. I didn't know